Trains. Much like the dude's carpet, they can really tie a country together. But their failure to do so might also tell you a bit about the growing pains of a society. This is the story of a railway scandal that fanned the flames of one of the greatest financial crises of the 19th century. It's also a story about the less than auspicious birth of the Romanian railways, following what is now known as the Strousberg affair. So all aboard now, and let's start the show.
Instant.
Okay, so we started out laughing, but today I'm very happy to welcome back Adel and hope to have an equally delicious episode despite not having chocolate as our main topping this time around. So, Adel dear, what have you been up to?
I'm not much. Looking forward to whatever it is we're going to talk about today, since I already have the premise. I mean, pissed offness.
Oh, so you're
Yes, I've been prepped and primed. This is fine.
Well, I mean, every time we meet, we need to get angry about something. It's very rarely that we get to be like, oh, let's jointly delight in something nice. Yeah,
we don't get to touch grass that often.
We don't do that. We don't do that here. So no chocolate for Adele today.
Yeah.
However, may I interest you in some trains?
Of course, please. I'd be delighted. Get me out of here. Okay.
What is your relationship with trains, Adele? Do you have anything to share with us?
I'm not sure.
Publicly,
I mean, I've used them.
But have they used you?
I mean, possibly, considering, I've paid to use them, so... Yeah, but come to think about it, I haven't actually been on a train in a long while.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't use them?
I really like trains. It's just that somehow the automobile transport kind of took over. Yeah. So I don't really use them anymore. Mm-hmm. But yeah, typically if I want to feel, or if I am already feeling nostalgic and there's some sort of melancholy happening, I'll definitely hop on a train and go to Sibiu or whatever. Why is that always the first thing I think about? Like, hop on a train, go to Sibiu. I don't know why Sibiu.
I actually wanted to ask you if the reason why you don't use the train as often is because of a particular route and maybe the fact that by train it's not necessarily the most efficient. Yeah, the fastest. Because
aren't they all like that?
Well, yes, but the routes I use, going home and visiting friends and stuff, while it's obviously not as fast as it should be, given the 20th century.
Yeah.
And that is not necessarily, as I understand, because I have asked, why is the train slower now than it used to be when I was a child? And they said, well, it's obviously also the locomotives and things like that. Some of them are old, but they could go faster. But the problem is the infrastructure is not kept up. So unfortunately, it's not maintained, and it's...
The upkeep is a bit shaky. Yeah, but still, I feel like for most destinations, for me, since I don't have a home to go home to other than where I live.
You were born home.
Yeah, I'm home, okay? That's it. For any other destination, I feel like the car or bus/car or the plane is way faster.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's also sort of indicative not just of the, as we said, problems with the upkeep of the infrastructure in Romania, but also the fact that the routes, as they were made at the time that they were made, obviously they were designed to serve certain purposes, like getting commuters to things like factories or, linking certain cities that have since then had a population decline or just lost their importance in the economy and in many people's lives. And no new tracks have been put down. So you get this very, because as you mentioned, going to Sibiu from Cluj is to Sibiu, the distance in kilometers or miles or whatever you want to measure it in is not that far. It should be like, I don't know, 2 hours journey.
Yeah,
but it takes,
like
I think, 6 because, the speed, but also because there's a detour. It doesn't just go the shortest distance. So
yeah, I know. There are also a lot of defunct lines and destinations that, like they had to manage at some point. With I want to say modern times because I feel like our entire life is kind of weird, as in we've been living in modern times, but sometimes it doesn't feel like, it feels like sort of an amalgamation of modern and like pre-modern.
It's a very all over the place country that we live in.
It has so many places. It's all over.
Okay, so I want us to learn more about the Strousberg affair today. What's that, you might ask?
I will ask.
It's a 19th century railway construction scandal that nearly led to the abdication of then Fresh Prince of Hohenzollern. And was one of a chain of events that contributed to the Long Depression, which was the Great Depression before the Great Depression. Because we live in a very stable system.
Absolutely, definitely.
Crying in millennial tears.
That's all we have, okay? Yeah. Dehydrating.
But you might still ask, Diana, why would anyone care? Why does Diana want to talk about dead people again?
I mean, come on. History is history. It's very important to know about your own past.
Well, yeah, I concur, because I think that history is basically the shit you forgot about that people still do to each other.
So history repeating, yes? Okay. What have we learned? Nothing.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and hence the Strousberg affair, although a Romanian scandal, has the easily recognizable shape of a major infrastructure project that, unfortunately, became fertile ground for funneling funds into private pockets, arranged public auctions, insider trading, and many more. And I hate these stories, really, because public works should have a happy ending, I think. Keep the plot twists and the drama for the private sector, I say.
I don't know if I can concur. Like, does anything that happens in public end in happiness? I don't know.
This is about what I desire, not about our realities.
I see, okay.
See? Now, before we sink our teeth into the actual scandal, let me just give you like a bit of a context for this whole mess that kicks off in 1872, actually, and is known as the Long Depression. So, by the second half of the 19th century, you had a number of speculative bubbles ready to burst, chief among them being railroads, because this was, after all, the century of steam. And of course, you cannot have a fully fledged economic crisis without real estate spinning out of control.
Of course.
And on top of that, there was this whole thing about the sort of silver market crashing because the Germans decided to switch to the gold standard, and they were getting most of their most of their silver from the US. And so a series of events, but like railroads and real estate were the main ones. The whole panic led to bank runs and bank failures, followed by commercial bankruptcies and severe unemployment, followed by something like 30 years of deflation.
Ooh.
So, not good. And most historical records of GDP, although GDP is obviously not
the best indicator.
But they show a significant slowdown of growth in most parts of the world for the period between 1873 and 1896. Okay, so trains. Trains are great. We love them, don't we? But how did they end up fueling a bubble? Any ideas?
I'm sure it's in the same way that real estate did. Something tells me investing or over-investing in something that had no potential or had some potential in paying off, but not a lot. Mm-hmm. So something that was overestimated, I guess.
Yeah, because I think in one way with things like infrastructure, you tend to think that, oh, okay, so there's a bubble and obviously that's bad, but at the end of the day, after the craziness subsides, you still have infrastructure, which obviously has a very important role, and it gives your community benefits, as opposed to, I don't know, NFTs.
Yo, we're not getting into NFTs. We don't have enough time for that.
No. I don't want to, but like, you know, bubbles are not built the same.
Yes, but they have the same effect.
Yeah.
Meow.
I'm sorry, So you have infrastructure and what went wrong? Well, you see, around 1871, a perfect storm was brewing, and to nobody's surprise, it involved the Germans. Should we cry in Eastern European?
Yes, please, in Balkans.
Yes.
Balkan tears everywhere.
Oh, yeah. The best tears. The saltiest tears.
Of course.
Okay, but, you know, before the pedants attack us, technically, we're not talking about Germany yet, because what we now call Germany was at that point still a mosaic of principalities and duchies and the like. But there was this big wet boy of a place among them called Prussia. And Prussia had an incorrigible asshole called Bismarck at its helm. So, you know, that's trouble right there.
He had his hands on a lot of throats.
That's very well put.
Yes.
We
remember. We haven't forgotten.
He was a choking daddy.
Wow, straight into the kink. Yes.
We're talking about Germans, after all, so...
How the fuck did I miss that?
Weird sex is bound to happen at some point.
Hopefully. At this point, we're just hoping for it. It's fine.
So it was the Prussians who essentially created the Germany we all know and love. After delivering a swift kick in the... You're delivering it now.
I am. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to kick. It was just like a knee-jerk reaction, okay?
So after delivering a swift kick in the nuts to the French during the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-1871.
But yo, that kick in the nuts was not only like the war itself, but the fact that they made France pay for it threefold.
Pay for the wall.
Yes, for the war in this case. Threefold. So while Germany, I'm sure, had its economic problems and the long depression was pretty long, it still had enough, you know, income coming out from, like, imported from France to, you know, like, be okay.
Yeah, but actually, as we are going to learn, a lot of money can also cause a lot of trouble. So, as you rightfully anticipated, during negotiations, former Prussia, now Germany, makes France pay through the nose for the war. And the French had to pay something like 5 billion francs, which at the time, France's budget, the whole budget of France was 20 billion francs.
Wow.
So it's, yeah,
25%.
Yeah, I found a comparison on a blog. It said it would be like the US today forking over more than $5 trillion for, I don't know, for a war, but like...
Yeah, but like it was a 3-year war, right? So a 2-year war, 70 to 71? Or 72?
No, just 1 year.
Yeah. So, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this motherlode of a sum was not paid all at once, but over the course of around 2 years. But, you know, it was just enough to allow for the speculative bubbles to inflate. Okay, then, what did the Germans do with all that dosh? They spent roughly 80% to cover the costs of war, put in place a system of pensions, finance the construction of modern Berlin, and many other useful things because they're Germans and they are sensible. I mean, basically, you know, Germany with all the cool things that we still admire about them was basically laying the foundations of that coolness.
Yeah, this is where it started. Yeah, this is. And then now we're here, okay?
Even after all that, there was still more money left because that payment from France was 3 times more than the amount of all the money in circulation in Germany.
Oi, you! Shut your mouth and look at my wad!
So new companies and businesses started popping up, but a third of those were banks. You can't have too much of a good thing, and banks are not even good things, but...
Okay.
Oops, that was me.
That was the second kick in the nuts. Okay.
So a lot of that lazy money was directed towards speculating on railway building projects because, as we said, it was the new thing, the shiny thing at that time.
Or was it just like the easy thing at that point, since it had reached like the lay person, let's say?
Well, I think it was probably a combination of things because obviously you also had many sort of newish nation states or existing nation states consolidating, and that usually meant that they would also invest in centralizing their infrastructure, linking up the cities, linking up maybe military objectives and so on and so forth. And obviously also, you have the global markets that sort of tend to be linked up, and colonialism and all that.
We're
also European stuff.
Yes.
Yes. So trades were very useful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the infrastructure. That was like the main thing. That and, the naval infrastructure.
Yeah. But there wasn't enough demand for railway construction in Germany by that time. Well, not as much as the heated market demanded. So the money went abroad to the Balkans and places like the fairly recently established Romanian principalities. And lo and behold, we have arrived upon the shores of these here parts. What was the situation then in what we like to lovingly call Romanistan? Like many other countries that weren't calling the shots in international politics in those days or ever, the Romanian principalities had just gotten a brand new German boy to be their prince instead of their previous homegrown talent.
Of course.
Cries in Cuza.
I mean, Why wouldn't you? Thank you, conservatives, again.
Young Karl Eitel Friedrich Zephyrinus Ludwig von Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen.
Wow, that's a mouthful, okay.
Or Karol, for short, took a long look at the state of the Romanian railway system and decided we should have some.
I mean, he took a very short look considering our railway system at the time. Yeah. It was pretty short.
Yeah, it was. It was basically linking up the capital, Bucharest, with the port city of Giurgiu, which was important because it was a link to the Danube. Yeah. So they eventually agreed on a few routes that would need to be constructed. And the idea was basically to link up the north and south of the country. At that point, the Romanian principalities were just Moldova and Wallachia. So, yeah. And of course, you also wanted to have like a window towards the world, and that would mean linking up with the railway system in Austria-Hungary. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but the Romanian government by then had a bit of a history of drawing up plans for railways that came to nothing, basically. Why does that sound familiar? Including a proposal that sought financing from Crédit Mobilier. There are many podcast episodes on the shenanigans of Crédit Mobilier. They were one of the most important financial institutions of the world during that period. And they were involved in things like the Union Pacific railroads in the US, and also all sorts of shenanigans with real estate in Paris.
I see.
Anywho, we dodged that bullet. But the idea is that scores of railroad development plans were already waiting on the back burner. So, what made this one special? Well, networking, that's what. Introducing Bethel Henry Strousberg. Despite what the anglicized name would suggest, he was actually German, a German railway entrepreneur who built up his reputation as a tycoon. And let me rewind that actually for a second, because the man started his career as an agent for several building societies entrusted to handle members' payments. And for some reason, he took an amount of money and booked a passage to America, but was found out when the steamer had to return to Southampton.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's... Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you would expect that at this point.
Yeah, well, after serving some time, Strousberg did eventually end up in the US, where he became a successful publisher and a journalist, as well as a manager of an insurance company. A very trustworthy person.
Absolutely. So. Talk about career paths. A transatlantic career path. Okay.
Yeah. By the early 1860s, he had gone back to Germany, Prussia, and embarked on a second career as a railway entrepreneur and industrialist.
I love that word, entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur, yes.
Everyone's an entrepreneur.
Yes. He had good contacts in the Prussian government, so he acquired the license to build the East Prussian Southern Railway line from Tilsit to Insterburg, I think, in 1862, followed by the Berlin-Görlitz Railway, which opened in 1867.
Okay. So those were actually finished?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So,
sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Yes. You build your reputation at home and then...
Yeah. You do a bit of good, you do a lot of shit.
It's fine. Of course, as long as it's not domestic shit.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so back in Romania, the official bid for the construction of those planned railroads that we discussed had been won by an Austrian company called Offenheim, actually. However, Strousberg was very cozy with several high-ranking members of the Prussian aristocracy, and he actually appointed them as members of his board, so... besides that, there was this other thing which probably influenced the decision because Strousberg was friends with kind of Caro's daddy.
Of course. That makes sense.
So, he got the commission. And let me just take a moment to remind you that Karol is considered one of the good ones in terms of the shitheads we had as rulers.
He is considered one of the good ones, yeah.
But if you think about it, he was crowned in 1866, and basically at the beginning of this scandal, he was barely 5 or 6 years into his reign, and he had already overruled his government to appoint his papa's poker partner with the construction of the national railroads.
Yeah. Okay. I'm pretty sure that wasn't constitutional, though.
Many things were not, but but hashtag not all Prussians.
Oh, sure.
So let's not.
But I mean, I'm sure he had a vested interest in getting that railroad built because it was his reputation, and he needed all the support he could get. Considering the fact that at that point in time, I think. The Romanian sentiment was more of a French.
Yes, it was
allied,
definitely.
Yeah, so I think he needed the pluses in his court, but I mean,
yeah,
he bet on the wrong guy.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, he probably was like, of course, if we hire one of the trusty German compadres, nothing will.
Yeah, because that's the reputation that you know of. That's what you're used to, and then you make a decision based on that, and you need it done. And then you do unconstitutional shit to get that done because you think it's gonna happen, and then it doesn't happen. Okay. Spoiler alert.
Now, you might ask yourself as well, why doesn't a state just roll up its sleeves and execute its own goddamn public infrastructure?
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas why that might have been the case?
Why we didn't do that at that point in time? I don't think there was anyone to execute the infrastructure. Even if we
there
had
was
a plan.
Literally not enough state in Romania.
There wasn't enough. No. We were a burgeoning state.
We were very burgeoning in every facet of our existence.
We really were. I mean, we barely got our independence in 1978. We weren't even fully autonomous, but I mean, So we didn't have the.
Yeah, you hit the problem on its head. You hit the nail on its head.
Yeah,
the problem, the nail,
It was a nail problem, okay?
Yeah, because as you said, the country wasn't fully independent yet. And obviously there was a lack of experts in various domains that could do things, and lack of funds.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm sure there were some funds, considering that, some things, I don't think there were a lot of funds yet.
No, because obviously if you think about the fact that we were a pre-industrial country in many ways, yeah, in most ways,
Yeah.
then obviously you don't have the capacity to produce enough to then have a surplus, and hence
you're not there yet. Yeah,
you're not there yet. So
I mean, I used burgeoning it in its meaning. Like I wasn't just trying to be funny. It really was the beginning.
Yeah, so the point is that you do need to bring in foreign capital to let them build it, use it for a number of years. For instance, in the case of the Strousberg line, the company could make money off the use of the railroads for like 90 years, and they only had to sort of make allowances for the postal office. The rest of it,
as in not tax it.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then once the lease would have expired, the Romanian state would actually end up with the railroads. So that was the plan. But as we look more closely into this venture, mischief and shenanigans and tomfoolery abound. First off, the Romanian government offered to pay Strousberg an inflated price per kilometer of completed tracks. Again, very familiar.
Okay.
It keeps happening nowadays. It's a more common occurrence with things like roads and highways.
Yeah, we still have the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been years. It's been an eternity.
Secondly, the way the deal was supposed to function was that Strousberg could issue bonds in his fund's name during the construction phase, with Romania then issuing government bonds throughout the 90 years of private ownership. So that was the process. But the person entrusted with supervising bond emissions was Carol's father's former chamberlain, a guy called Ambron, which was sus because, hello, how many more of Daddy's friends are you gonna squeeze into the deal? And secondly, it was super illegal. Because at the time, you were expressly forbidden to appoint foreigners to such strategic public offices. Also, Ambron was chummy with Strousberg, so yeah, perfect storm there.
Okay, wait a second. So he represented the Romanian state in the deal?
Yeah, he was basically
in that sense, he was a commissioner?
He was the watchdog. So...
okay.
And in December 1868, Ambron went ahead and issued them bonds, but he did so falsely claiming they were government bonds because, they were considered very safe, so much more desirable. But to avoid being found out, most of these bonds were only traded in Berlin, so they never made it to Romania.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, because the scrutiny would have been way greater over here. Yeah.
So a couple of years scroll by, and then the Franco-Prussian War begins in 1870, which means that Prussia's more focused on the war efforts, so Strousberg starts to come up short both in terms of funding and labor force. By December 1870, my dude announces he can't and won't pay no more and urges the government to step up and pay up.
Okay.
Surprise, however, because not only are the builders woefully behind schedule, but the quality of their work is anything but German.
But weren't the Germans the ones building?
Yeah, but like I said, it was anything but German, the quality of their work.
Oh, wow.
It was shit.
That's so disappointing. No.
Yeah, I know. And on top of that, Strousberg's company also reported some 19 kilometers worth of tracks as completed, although they were not, and asked to be paid for it.
That's very sexy. But shouldn't like, what, wasn't there like a certificate of completion issue? Like there should have been like based on mileage, blah blah, because he was supposed to be paid by no.
Okay, so here's how this one unfolded.
Okay.
The government told Ambron, remember the guy who's the to stop any payments made to Strousberg, but remember, they're friends. So Ambron just ignores them and pays for the non-existent railroad tracks, like a boss.
Okay. That's okay. Did he serve time, or that's not something we don't, too big to fail?
Sexy,
okay.
Sexy time.
I don't know. It's giving me too big to fail vibes. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not yet, but in a
Close.
moment.
Okay.
In a moment.
We're gonna. Okay.
As things begin to unravel for Strousberg,
Spaghetti. The spaghetti monster.
As things begin to unravel for Strousberg across the board, he blackmails the government by saying that if it doesn't pick up the tab, he will just walk and bye-bye any further railroad completion. By the time, however, a significant chunk of German stockholders, especially the upper crust, were involved in the affair, and they weren't about to lose money if Romania decided to just ditch the whole thing. So you said too big to fail. No, it's too big to fail.
I mean, if they invested capital, if they bought the bonds, yeah, that's what happens.
There's public outrage over the Strousberg fiasco in Romania, and while a significant part of the public figures already had French sympathies, as you mentioned, and sided with France during the war, the mood became distinctly and at times violently anti-German. Prince Carol is close to abdicating at this point. He he writes to his papa, who says, like,
stay strong.
Balls of Steel Bismarck himself intervenes and in no uncertain terms tells the Romanian government to buy back the stocks for the railways that weren't even completed yet, or else.
Okay.
Let's
like I said, he had his hands on a lot of throats.
Yep.
And that can be considered a dangerous threat. So.
Yeah. And Romania was very chokeable.
Absolutely.
If we could put it that way. Because
still is. It's fine.
We never got rid of that king.
Yeah. Definitely a sub. Oh, it's fine.
And not even a power sub.
Right? Like that. It's not even. Yeah.
No,
it has no power. It's just subbing there.
It's
like
just eternally,
the backup sub.
Eternally subbing. So Bismarck threatened to make noises about the principalities to the Ottomans if they didn't shut up and rescue the German stockholders. A specific segment of the German stockholders, let's be honest. I will read a quote from Bismarck himself, from the man himself.
Yes.
As he sort of recounted the whole Strousberg affair to the French ambassador a few years later. Close to 200 million francs have been swallowed up in these Romanian railway... But maybe if I can have the disdain just sort of shine through, because there's a lot of disdain coming from the man.
From us as well, so go ahead.
Okay, so close to 200 million francs have been swallowed up in these Romanian railways, which yield nothing, and the value of which is hardly 1/10 of the cost. Our greatest lords and our bootblacks believed that Strousberg would present them with a gold mine, and a great many risked the best part of what they possessed, believing the promises of this adventurer. All that is buried now in the Romanian mud, and one fine day, 2 dukes, 1 general who is an aide-de-camp, a half-dozen ladies in waiting, twice that many chamberlains, 100 coffee-house owners, and all the cabmen of Berlin found themselves totally ruined. The emperor took pity on the dukes, the aide-de-camp, the ladies in waiting, and the chamberlains, and charged me with pulling them out of the trouble. I appealed to Bleichroder, who agreed to rescue the Duke of Ratibor, the Duke of Uyest, and General Count Lehndorff. But the ladies in waiting, the cabman, and the others were left drowning.
I mean, I feel like that's, Prussian/German politics to this day. No?
Yeah.
No? Am I wrong?
So, this is already a shit show. I think we can agree on that. But wait, there's more. A chronicler of the time noted that another important question of the day, buying back the railways. Although everyone agrees it should be done, rumors say some liberals are involved in a business with personal profits from this operation.
Which liberals? Wait.
The Romanian Liberal Party.
I see.
So apparently the Romanian Liberal Party was in power during the beginnings of the whole kerfuffle. Mm-hmm. Delayed telling the public that the state would have to buy back the stocks, and the idea being that this way they would pay less for them, right? But the snag was that several party members and assorted rich fucks bought a large number of stonks, and this led to a considerable increase in their price, which the government was forced to buy back, with taxpayer money at this higher price. Eventually, the whole thing ended in 1889, and the Romanian state did buy back the whole thing and gain full ownership of what would become the first instance of the Romanian railroads.
I mean, that's a hell of a way to start.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite the christening, right? And it's been going really great ever since. It has had its ups and downs, but it wasn't a very good beginning.
Talk about a maiden voyage.
If spawn points are important, this wasn't great.
I'm sad.
I told you you would be by the end of this. I'm
sad, pissed. I wonder. I mean, I'm wondering regarding the effects this whole thing had. Well, obviously on the economy and whatever, but I wonder about the effects it had on the king. Is there like anything, did he say something about this, or is there any?
It was a big scandal. I mean, when I was reading the Călinescu's biography of Eminescu.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unrelated. Yeah. Totally unrelated.
Well, I mean, he was a journalist at that point and more well known for being a journalist than a poet.
So, just a small aside for anyone listening who isn't from Romania or is from these here parts but has not really paid much attention in lit classes in high school. Eminescu is the guy we all have to pretend is the nation's greatest poet, but he was also a journalist for a conservative newspaper at the time, and I'm afraid to say a rabid anti-Semite. Longtime listeners might also recognize him as a member of the totally unrelated expanded universe, as the lover of Veronica Micle, who testified against another conservative big shot, Titu Maiorescu, in an investigation about diddling young girls while he was a school inspector. So yeah, it was a small world and it was full of douchebags. Back to the show.
And he wrote about this scandal as well. And actually, one of the incidents that sort of prefaced his going mental was that he got a revolver. He shot a revolver in a public place and said something about the king needing to be deposed or something like that. And it was in relation to the scandal.
I see. Wow. I didn't think he was capable of anything besides poeting. Besides doing poets. See, this is like a very good instance of your intentions don't matter. Whether his intentions were good or not, whether he had like vested interest or not, it doesn't matter. Let's say that his intentions were good. Well,
yeah. But
there
also,
you go.
It's also a sign of, well, even if you had the purest of intentions, if you're going to go about in the shadiest of ways and do a host of blatantly bad stuff to get that done, you are sort of exposing yourself to a lot of criticism that is going to probably be valid, because if you start off your venture by, accepting basically someone's commission over someone who has won it, like legally, and then you're going to appoint someone who is blatantly in a conflict of interest in a certain position which they shouldn't occupy according to the law of the country you govern. You know what I'm saying? So even if he was the purest of pure hearts, it's...
That's true. But like since these two things kind of overlap, right? The Offenheim and the Strousberg. Were there no talks with between legislators in Offenheim and legislators in Strousberg, or it was like everything?
Oh, honey, that's so cute. Like, do you not know how things work when they need to work a certain way? Like, when you show up, you know when, for maximum transparency, right, you have these positions, if you hold a public position, right, that has to be sort of advertised, and there's like an official interview or like whatever, a written exam or something, right? And then all those things are supposed to be available for any ulterior inspection and such. But like by the time the position is advertised, it is basically already filled by someone. And it doesn't just happen with government positions. Like, recently there was this scandal within the, I think, NFL, right, in the US, about coach positions being again advertised, especially to like people of color, and they would show up, but it would just be to sort of tick a box, like they have a rule that says they have to be like equal opportunity,
right? Like so it's just for show, basically. Yeah, you just go through the ropes, but you don't actually deliver in a non-corrupt way, because that is what it is. Okay. I keep hoping for some reason, like I have this thing, like I think, okay, but we weren't always like this, right?
What?
And I keep going back. I keep going back in history, and the further I go back, I'm like, it was the same. It was the same. Nothing has changed. Nothing.
Well, I mean, things do change, of course, because...
But like the principle of the thing, I mean, it's the same.
Well, because in principle, some of the things still keep happening, because you don't really have a shake-up of things like power structures. Then at the end of the day, this is what determines many things. So if there's still a very disproportionate way in which power is allocated to different groups or individuals. I mean, I'm sure I would do a lot of naughty things if I were given a lot of power and everyone else around me would not be able to retaliate, even though I think I'm quite a nice person. But I would rationalize my decisions, and it would seem like, no, I'm just... this is just normal. I'm not doing anything bad. This is just, it needs to be done.
Another thing I don't get about this thing, though, like, he started, like, this whole thing. He started building the railways. Like, he built some of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, long depression, all of a sudden, no funds. Right? Instead of putting, like, put a pin in it. We can't do this right now. You gotta wait some more, right? You have to wait a little bit.
Well, they did eventually sort of get the railroads done, because as I said, at the end of the whole thing, the whole scandal, the state did buy back the railways. And of course, then they built upon that. But they were having trouble both with the amount of the project that was completed and, of course, the quality of the work.
I still find that so weird that the quality of the work was bad. I mean, were they using local workers, or were they using Germans?
But that's not the point. I'm sure it's going to be a situation that, like it was in many instances in different things in Romania at the time, and not just in Romania, I'm guessing in all other countries that had yet to have like a qualified workforce in very specialized fields like engineers and so on and so forth. So you probably had like German engineers and maybe craftsmen or things like that for very specific things. And then for, I don't know, things like digging or like moving dirt or,
I get it.
Then you would have the local labor force. And also I'm guessing the same as with roads nowadays and highways. Well, the highways we do eventually build is a lot of the funds, although just like in the case of the Strousberg affair, it's overpriced to begin with when they do the assessment of the project. Then when the project actually starts, you end up with shoddy workmanship because materials are whisked away, resold for someone's profit, or you get you bill for the maybe not the most expensive materials, but like high quality materials, but then you come in with the cheaper stuff and things like that.
Why are we still doing this, Diana? And by we, I mean not
the recording.
No, not the recording, but like in general. Like, why are we like this as people, humans? Sadness overtakes the Balkans. Okay. Thank you, Carol. Thanks, man. This is clearly bad politics and business, my dude. Like, this is not how you rule a country, and you know it, I hope. But, yeah.
Wherever you are.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so this is it for today's sadness.
It's cute that it has daily increments. I was hoping for at least, monthly, but no.
Yeah. If you like the show, you know the drill. Share,
like, and subscribe, please.
Exactly.
We're fun. We promise.
Yeah. And see you next time. Bye.
Tschüss. Bye.